Welcome to High Flyers in STEM, Greatness Has No Gender podcast, where we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of women in STEM. I'm your host, Deirdre Finnerty, and I'm thrilled to have two powerful leaders from Cook Medical with us today. Fiona King, Senior Manager, Research and Development, and Annemarie Beglin, QA Director. From a young age, Fiona and Annemarie dreamed of making a positive impact on people's lives. Today, they're leading innovative teams that are transforming healthcare and making a real difference for patients around the globe. Fiona and Annemarie recognise the importance of working within the progressive and forward-thinking company Cook Medical, who have paved the way for equality and proudly boast a leadership team representing 55% women. Thank you to our sponsors HERO, a multi-award-winning company that specialises in financial success for contractors, freelancers and solopreneurs. Welcome to the show, Fiona and Annemarie. Great. So, Annemarie and Fiona, thanks so much for joining me on this podcast, Greatness Has No Gender. It's really good to be able to kind of talk about your journeys and learn a little bit about you both. I'm excited to kind of hear where it started and bring us to where we are now. I know you're both senior leaders in your business, and we'll talk a little bit about ED&I and the different initiatives that Cook brings to the company, and we'll discuss a little bit about that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey, and Annemarie, I might start with you and just kind of get to understand a little bit about how you got into STEM in the first place.
I guess I always loved science from a child in primary school all the way up through secondary school. I always had a passion for science, in particular biology. And in secondary school, I had a biology teacher who really helped that motivation for science and the way she taught, and she was so inclusive. And she really kind of helped fuel that passion for science. And I remember a trip to the Young Scientists exhibition when I could really see science and its impact and how you could actually pursue a career in science that made a difference. So you could really see how you could make a difference to patients in, say, the pharma or medical device industry. And that really just then progressed into secondary education, then went on to complete my course in analytical science and applied biology, and then went on to pursue a career in the med device industry, or in the pharmaceutical industry first.
Brilliant. So pharma was your first kind of introduction into it, and I suppose it was making a difference, wasn't it?
Yeah, just getting that start, I suppose, was the hardest part. Most places wanted somebody with experience, but you were trying to gain that experience and trying to get your foot in the door, which was really challenging. So I found that really difficult.
Yeah.
But eventually got a shot with the company in Waterford where I'm originally from, which was pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
They did inhalations for asthmatics and then tablet manufacturing as well. And started in the quality department there. I've worked 29 years now in the quality department, always loved quality. And I think those kind of skills of, organisation, I was able to bring that to quality, kind of bring those analytical skills through my career.
Did you always find you were an organised person?
Always organised, yeah, always.
You were made for quality.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, I just kind of always had that passion. But at the same time, when I was young, actually wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
Always wanted to be a nurse, and ironically decided not to pursue that career because I didn't want to work nights and I didn't want to work 12-hour shifts, and ended up working nights and 12-hour shifts in my career. So if I had my time back, would I have chosen nursing? I don't know. But again, it was still in that same area.
Yes,
still
absolutely.
That same passion.
Quality and biology.
Yeah. But yeah, ended up working all those nights and 12-hour shifts in the end in industry anyway, regardless. But never would have thought from the course that you were doing in college that I'd end up doing what I did in any of my roles, really. Mm-hmm. You don't really understand what different roles you can fulfill by studying STEM. You don't understand. It's so broad, yeah. So if you were to ask the 16 or 17-year-old me, where will you end up, or what career will you end up in, I never would have thought it would have been quality assurance in a pharma or med device company.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we should really look to embed and get better at, is educating our kids to see what careers they could potentially have.
It's very challenging all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, when they don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes back to that, doesn't it? It goes back to your subject choices, to what's available to, and it's not even from your degree, really, isn't it? You can move at any stage in your career.
Yeah, you can. And a lot of what you study in college, although very interesting, and some of it will apply in your career, but a lot of it won't. So it's getting in and getting that experience and learning and continuing to learn through your career. Don't just get your qualifications, move into industry, and then just work your way through your different roles in your career, but continue to learn, continue that journey of learning throughout your entire career.
Absolutely.
Really important.
Yeah, it really is. Fiona, you must have had a very different path into what's got you to where today.
So I suppose I was very similar to Annemarie in the fact that I always loved science in school. As a small child, I had quite the polish off for disassembling and assembling things. I remember about age 7, I liked to take door handles off. I learned very early on that you need to keep the spindle in the door on your side and not let it fall out into the hole. Thankfully, my mother was there to rescue me. That kind of just making stuff, taking stuff apart was always very interesting.
Inquisitive.
Yeah. Some would say it was an advantage, some would say it wasn't. I was always very good at putting stuff back together once I'd taken it apart. And I suppose for me, it was when I got into secondary school, I loved science. I especially loved chemistry. I went to school in Galway and there was an absolutely fantastic chemistry teacher there called Mrs. Keaveney, who was, she really instilled it into you that you're not just doing an experiment. This is why you're doing it. This is what you're trying to find. This is what you're trying to prove. So I suppose that scientific methodology always appealed to me. It was process. It was logical. And then if you think about engineering is taking maths and science, applying it to basically a technical problem where you need to get a good economic benefit. Mm-hmm. So for me, engineering was the logical choice. I come from a family of engineers, accountancy. My mother is a nurse. So I started out doing mechanical engineering in NUI Galway. And then when I was in my second year, they actually opened up biomedical. So I switched to biomedical in University of Galway now. It was NUIG back then. And I suppose the reason I wanted to go into biomedical engineering is that there was a lot of opportunities in it. And also for me personally, it was that I know when I was developing a product or, working as part of manufacturing operations, you were making a difference to a patient's life or even a healthcare professional, something like that. So I always knew that what I was making made a difference. So that was a huge pull for me into STEM.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's, from the medical device industry, what you're working on makes such a difference. They're life-changing products. And that was the draw for you, as you say, into it.
But I also think the scope that you have in the industry, like I've worked across several multinational companies and I've worked in lots of different disease areas. So I've got to know, some would say very little, but then some quite in depth in certain areas. Like currently in Cook, we're working on peripheral artery disease. Before I joined Cook, I wouldn't have worked in that area. So you're learning a lot about that disease state. And it's funny, once you start learning about it, you start going, yes, they definitely have that. You can see that condition, you talk to more people, you realise how common it is. And for me as well, it was the scope I had in my career. I was able to move into a lot of different areas. So I worked in operations, I worked in technology transfers, so like taking products from Ireland to other locations, back to Ireland, basically all of that type of stuff. I work now in R&D. You were able to do lots of different things. And I think especially if you are a woman in STEM, there are a million avenues open to you. Mm-hmm. And that's the big reason I like it, because you don't get bored.
Yeah, it's funny, like Fiona would be very much in the engineering side of things, much more technical than I have ever really in any of my roles. Mm-hmm. So I would always have more on the softer side of that industry. The systems, the supporting systems, like it's a very regulated industry. There's lots of standards, lots of regulations that we have to comply with. And there's the quality management system that, has to work around the design of those products and getting those products to market. So I've always worked on that softer side, less product focused. So again, there's so many varied roles that you can do in the industry. You don't have to be the best engineer, or you don't have to be somebody who's brilliant at statistics or Six Sigma problem solving. You can have softer skills and still do well in that softer side of the industry.
The supporting side, the business.
Yeah, so well. I primarily kind of cut my teeth in the area of quality systems. So like management review, doc control, change control, internal audit, regulatory audit, all that stuff that you don't have to have that in-depth knowledge of the products. You have to know your quality management system. Mm-hmm. So, you can use those skills in both the kind of more technical side, but then also the kind of non-technical support side.
And I think as well, what people don't realise, if you have a bad quality system, it makes it very difficult to develop products, to produce products successfully. And also it puts patients at risk. Like the reason we need all of these extra checks and balances is because ultimately this is going into a person, and you need to make sure it's safe. And that's why there are recalls. And we've all heard of, products that have not been scrutinised as much as they should be and have had adverse effects. So I wouldn't even call the quality system side soft. I would actually say it's an essential part of it. And it's no different to what we would consider other highly regulated industries like automotive and aeronautical. They're all there for a reason.
And we know that, Annemarie, you wanted to be a nurse besides being a burglar and taking locks off doors. Anything else, Fiona?
Well, it was to be an Egyptologist very initially. Then I realised, no, it was basically between medicine, science and engineering. And for me, engineering was, I just thought if I went into science, I could end up stuck in a lab. And I was also probably a little myopic in the fact that I probably thought of, a scientist is generally in academia rather, or in a lab, in a factory kind of thing. Probably no more than if somebody said, oh, you're an engineer, how many hard hats do you have? The furthest I've gotten to a hard hat is at a fancy dress party. Or if you're on fire, if you're in a, like a fire marshal type situation. So just trying to challenge that whole perception of what they do. So for me, engineering was the logical conclusion. But that being said, I had parents who were never like, oh, engineering is a male field.
Yes.
My sister, I have one sister and she is also an electronic engineer. It's very unusual to have two girls in the family and both being engineers. I think it's becoming a lot more common, but
that was unusual.
It was quite unusual and people are kind of surprised. And we go to my father, oh, did you want a son? And it was like, no. It's just to kind of get people out of that mindset.
Yeah.
And when I went into an all-girls school saying I wanted to do engineering, it was like, oh, why would you do that now? Would you not do science, or would you not do something? I had a career guidance teacher who's obsessed with occupational therapists. They do amazing work, but I was like, no, I don't work with sick people.
Not for you.
Yeah, not for me. But it was just like, it's people not thinking about STEM and cutting off their options too early. And by the way, you don't need to have to do honours maths to be an engineer. NUI Galway
On the record.
On the record, University of Galway offer a maths exam every summer that you can do and you can go in. You'll have to work like crazy in first year to catch up, but it's not an essential. Everybody thinks, oh, you need an A1 in maths. You don't. I was not best mathematician, but you learn it.
Okay, brilliant. So yeah, two very different journeys, but it's got you to really senior leadership. And as you said, it wasn't just taking a step all the time. You learned from different departments, different roles, which has been a huge part of it, hasn't it? Got your development. So the different business challenges and opportunities that have presented themselves to you both throughout your career. Is there anything that really sticks out as, I suppose, being defining for you guys that made you kind of maybe shift gear, or, you got over quite well that you'd love to share with us today? Anything you can think of, Fiona?
For me, it was, I spent quite a number of years working in kind of sustaining manufacturing engineering. And I'd done that for about 5 or 6 years, and I knew I wanted to do something different. And I knew I wanted to go into maybe more R&D type engineering, so process development, product design, that type of thing. So how I did that is I basically went, continuous education is a huge thing, because I went back to study 2 masters when I was working. I would highly recommend it. I think it is essential, and I know Annemarie has had a similar journey with continuous education, and I would say if you are a woman who wants to be a leader, or regardless of gender, continuous education is fantastically important. So I would have gone off, done my master's in biomedical engineering, then I did one in technology management. I also did a project management degree. And I'd done these over about 15 years while working all the time. I would have done black belts in Six Sigma, things like that. And that basically showed I was committed. I wanted to learn new things, and I was able to go and show I have this whole new skill set, and I have this background from sustaining engineering for years. I want to try something new, and basically go to leadership and say, I want these opportunities, and be seen to be looking for something new, something different. So being at times a bit of a pain about it, but kind of being like, when you're looking for somebody, hand up, think of me.
Yeah.
And being quite deliberate in my career development. Looking back, I probably should have been more deliberate, but I think that's a huge thing. Do not sit there and wait to think somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder. That is not going to happen. So it might happen for some people, but don't rely upon it, and just be front and center and be very much, okay, if you think of somebody, I want that opportunity. Yeah. And by the way, you will get that opportunity. It's not just sticking your name up and saying, I want it. You have to have a good track record behind you.
Yeah, it's true. You've worked hard, and where you spoke about that, you went back and did your master's, and Cook are really supportive of it. Cook even do a PhD,
Cook will even fund up to PhD level, which I was shocked by when I found this out when I joined Cook.
So phenomenal support there for you to keep education, keep learning.
Yeah, I had a little bit more unorthodox journey, I would say, to my education. So I did my original leave school, go to college, then said, okay, let's get a job. I'll go back and do some more courses. Then you get used to the money. You don't want to go back. I ended up actually doing my degree. I didn't get my degree originally. I just had a cert and a diploma. and then went back and got my degree when I had young kids, and Cook supported that. And then just this year I've gone back and done a level 9 professional development course with UL in strategic leadership. So again, Cook have supported that. I'd like to resonate with what Fiona has said. The question you had asked about the challenges in career is that, you know, you will have doors closed on you sometimes. A number of years ago, I had applied for the role that I'm in now and I was unsuccessful. Mm-hmm. And instead of just saying, oh, well, that's it, I'm done, I didn't get it, I was unsuccessful, I actually said, okay, well, what do I need to do to actually achieve it so that the next time the role becomes available, I'm going to put myself in a position so that I will be successful. And as Fiona said, it's not just sitting and waiting for it to come to you. That's not going to happen. You have to put in the work. You have to put in the hard work. So it's asking for that feedback, understanding your areas of weakness, understanding what you need to work on, putting plans in place to address those gaps. Yeah. Whether that be education or just how you show up every day in work, but just making sure that you are focusing on you. There is nobody sitting in a room thinking, what role can I give Annemarie Beglin or any of us? Yeah. You have to want that. It's your career. It's your career development. You need to drive it and you need to push it. And instead of sitting there waiting for it to manifest and come to you, you have to put it into action and you have to drive that yourself.
And I think that's key. As you said, you went for this position, didn't get it, but instead of looking, going, oh, I'm feeling sorry for yourself, it was like, okay, where are my gaps? And, you know, when it comes next time, I'll be ready.
Yeah, and I knew that I
drive,
understanding strategy and understanding just how you're working in quality and you're so focused on quality, but you actually have to realise that to be a leader, you need to understand that strategic view and vision. And that's something that I would say to any person that is interested, either moving into a role in a career in STEM and being a leader in STEM, or somebody that's already in STEM and wants to become a leader. Go back and get that basic understanding of strategy and of leadership. Identify the kind of leader you want to be. I feel that if I had done the course that I did this year, many years ago, I would be further along in my career than maybe earlier.
Yes.
So if people just have that plan, identify their gaps, put a plan in place to address those gaps and drive their own career. I think that's really important.
So it kind of leads really nicely to, do you think luck exists? Is it right place, right time, or is it a combination really?
I don't know if it's necessarily luck. I think all that work that you do yourself, when the opportunity arises, you're positioning yourself to be the right person. Sometimes maybe roles that you never thought would become available because, like in my case, a manager decided to resign from Cook, and then the person that I was reporting to moved into that gap, and that opened up the gap for me. And it was just because I had done the work in the last 4 years, then it just meant that I was ready.
Yes.
So I don't know, would you call that luck?
I don't think there's luck, because you wouldn't have gotten that role, Annemarie, if you weren't capable of it, had done the groundwork, had shown you the proven track record. So I don't think luck's involved. Right place, right time, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And I think when people talk about luck, the big thing for me is I do think right place, right time is a big factor. We've all had opportunities that have been like, oh, that was a great fit for me. Wow, was it great? But also, if you aren't, as I've spoken about earlier, if you aren't out there putting your hand up going, I'd like a new opportunity, you won't immediately spring to mind. So to me, it's putting yourself out there. And by the way, if you think I got everything I put my hand up for, no, I didn't. I was like,
I'd be worried if you did.
I was like, oh, you're down to the last 2 candidates again, or you're down to the last 3. And, you know, and then you're like, okay, I didn't get it this time. Did exactly what Annemarie said. But it was basically how I bounced back from that. And it wasn't like, I don't like them, they didn't give me that job, they gave to so-and-so. It's how you actually recover from that setback. And I think that's a huge factor of it. And then you can say, yeah, there's luck involved in that, but a lot of it is about how you personally do it. And go out there and prepare for, and that's another thing as well, is make sure you go in, especially if you're an internal candidate, you go in and you treat that as if you were an external candidate. I know it's a basic thing, but really prep for it. But also the other thing as well is luck to me also is working in a number of areas. You've spoken about strategic direction, understanding a lot of the parts in the business. A lot of women tend to become specialists and they stay specialists in a particular small niche area. And when I go out and I look at leaders, they've basically, regardless of their gender, a lot of them have moved around different parts of the business. And I think especially something like quality in Annemarie's case, you can move around a lot in quality. So that to me is still a lot of movement. But Annemarie would have a great understanding of, you talked about strategy, you talked about what does the business portfolio look like, where do we want to position ourselves, what is that heartache for, say, supply chain. So you need to have an understanding of all of that, because then you become a better leader by being able to stick on your different hats that people have to wear within your business. So I think you can talk about luck, but luck is a lot of being able to pull off all these different facets.
But it's giving yourself understanding and then positioning yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're kind of key.
And being a bit robust as well. Like, you're going to hit setbacks. Not everything's going to go your way. And it's how you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and off you go again.
That's what's got us here. Yeah, doing that. Have you ever doubted yourself in your career then? How do you... when something is almost fearful or it's a step up, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I self-doubt a lot. Every job I've ever moved into in my entire career, I've had that, they call the induction crisis. For the first 6 months, can I do this? Okay. Am I capable of this? I'm going to fail, I'm not going to be able. And I've always proven myself wrong. I think that you have to start listening to the positive and stop focusing on the negative. And we have a tendency to focus on what we didn't do right as opposed to what we did do right. Mm-hmm. And that what we didn't do right might be 5%, but we completely ignore the 95% that we've done really well. I think it's really just starting to focus on the positive side of what you've achieved.
It's like talking to ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's rewiring sometimes, going, look at all the good I've done.
I suffer from self-doubt all the time, but I never let it stop me. I think that's the difference. Don't let it control you. You control it. Everybody around you is telling you you can do it. The people that have given you the opportunity or the project, whatever it might be, believe in you. You just have to start, have that belief in yourself. And I think women in particular, we have a tendency to focus on the negative and kind of see what's wrong instead of what's right. I think it's changing, but it's something I think we need to work on all the time and constantly remind ourselves. Yeah, that we can. And it's funny, just a point that was made earlier on, and I said it to you earlier on as well, I've never seen myself as a woman in this industry. I'm just somebody who is really good at what I do. And I know that might sound very arrogant, but I know that I'm good at my job. I know that I'm good at quality. I know that I know it. And I've never ever seen myself as a woman. I'm just a person who's going to go for a job against all the other people, regardless of the gender.
And that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And it is. When you talk about greatness has no gender, that's it really. It's the best person is going for the job. Yeah. Sometimes a little bit more diversity can be needed. So if you have two candidates that are very similar, and maybe you need a different voice, but it is the best person.
Yeah.
You go for it like anyone else.
And in Cook Medical, I think you can really see that with our senior leadership team. Like 55% of the team are women. Our engineering director is a woman, our regulatory affairs director, our CI and business apps director, myself.
It's a phenomenal statistic.
Yeah.
Like when you look at worldwide, and you look at the stats, 25% of females are in leadership roles across engineering. Mm-hmm. And yet 55% of Cook leaders are female. So it's a wonderful stat to have.
Yeah. And I think that kind of just proves that it's the best person for the job and not, it's really gender doesn't come into it.
Absolutely. But you're ahead of the curve. And it's really good. And obviously that's why it never came to you, that you never distinguished yourself as female versus anything else.
And even I've worked in multiple companies, and it was never something that I ever thought about. And I don't remember experiencing anybody getting a job over a woman that was the best person for the job. I think anytime I've seen somebody getting a job, it's because they were the right person for it. But maybe I've not had an easier journey. I don't know.
I think as well, it's definitely to do with company culture, and there are companies out there that would be more traditional. I have to say, med devices in general, I haven't found a ton of misogyny, sexism. You're always going to get individuals, but that's life.
Individual.
And that's individuals. I have to say the big thing for me when it was joining Cook, because we always everybody thinks of engineering as very male dominated. It's when I joined Cook and you realise two of the directors of engineering are female. We have our own R&D director, another female R&D director. And it's the fact that 40% of engineers in Cook are women. And if you look at that against the national average in Ireland is about 12% of women. Like we have about 25% of the cohort that go into college now are female, which was higher than when I started. Mine was the class with 4 other girls and it had the most And that's when engineering classes were only around 40. So, but I worked it out in first year. There was one woman for every 17 men. I was on the college committee. We used to organise nights out with the nurses. That's what we had to do. And I think if you look at Ireland in general now, we still have a leaky pipeline. That's the problem. We have 25% of graduates are women in engineering, and then they leave. That's the problem. And it's why they leave. And there's multiple factors for that, and companies do need to look at that. But if you look, there's about 62,000 female engineering professionals in Ireland. But what I love about Cook is that there are so many female engineers. And I see it in RD. Like, there's women at all levels in the organisation. I can tell you they're starting out as junior engineers. There's female directors. There's team leads. There's every level, and there's women representatives.
It's being fed.
It's being fed. Yeah.
And that's really important, because the best people have to be there to get these roles. So it's obviously being fed, as you said, at every level. And that's key, isn't it? To keep these people going into engineering, to encourage young women to get into these different diversities. And because if it gets 25%, if it drops, can't keep being fed. So we've got to increasing those numbers so that the best people are there, be they male or female, to get the
But
jobs.
if you look at even in the last 8 years, there was 36,000 female engineers 10 years ago. We're up at 70 now. But it's what's changed there. And I think it's very unusual because, as I said, I started out in mechanical engineering, and there were me and I think 4 other girls. And yet mechanical engineering or biomedical engineering were practically the same course. And now if you look at biomedical engineering, I think it's 80% women. The name has changed. That's about it. And I just think it's to get out there to the schools, especially the all-female schools. They don't know what an engineer does. They have a good idea of what a scientist does. It's to basically really educate people on the amount of roles. And even, as Annemarie has spoken to, all of these myriad of other roles that people have never heard of.
Absolutely. And I know you do great work with going into schools and encouraging secondary schools. And even you spoke about it starting at national school, educating them. What is an engineer? And Cook do great work with that. They have great incentives with kind of TY programs, don't you? And you have the Inspire event as well.
We have partnerships with some local schools, and they come in and they get people come from all departments, and they talk about what potential careers you could do and what potential subjects and courses you could do in college to get you into that career, to try and make it interesting. And they do demonstration of our products and show their use within the clinical use. So it makes it interesting and tangible as well. And to see what kind of roles. And I think that was definitely not there when I was coming up through school.
Why would I want to do technical drawing? Like, sure, nobody uses that anymore. Stuff like that. But I think one of the other ones is something that Cook ran, and that's Campus Career. I thought that was a fabulous initiative when I heard about that. It's to basically get people who have their qualifications, but they might have mental health issues or challenges that, they mightn't interview that well. So they basically come and they do like an internship for about 12 weeks.
Yeah.
There's been people that have stayed on, they've loved it, and they've just said, oh yeah, look, I was trying to find a role for like a year and a half, just couldn't get in anywhere. And I have to say, when I heard about this initiative from Cook, I was like, that's a fabulous idea.
It is fabulous. In a country that we're at full employment and there's all this talent that, as you say, just don't interview well sometimes, for one reason or another. So it's huge.
They have some challenges, and companies typically are not prepared to support them. So that has very much been the case in Cook. And as Fiona said, like, we've had people that have spent the 12 weeks with us, and then they've applied for and been successful in roles.
And even the challenges, like, as I was talking to our HR people about it, like, the challenges they're not insurmountable at all. They're usually small accommodations. Like, they're very minor things. And it's just to give people that chance.
Absolutely. And it's just, again, it comes back to an understanding and education. And you're great at doing that, not just from HR with the unconscious bias. It's educating even your hiring managers on how to interview at different disabilities, different nationalities, all that as well. So it makes a huge impact. And I think you have over 13 nationalities in Cook Limerick at the moment.
Yeah, we have 2 facets to the business. So we have Cook Ireland, who is the manufacturing entity, and then we have Cook Medical Europe, who's our customer support and delivery entity.
Okay.
So within the customer support and delivery, we have European speakers of all the European languages. So that if you're a clinician in France and you want to call up about a product, you will speak to a French speaker, but you'll get through to Limerick.
Okay.
Or you'll speak to somebody who can speak fluent French. So we cover all of the European languages, extremely diverse in that regard. And then even in the manufacturing facility in recent years, it's become more and more diverse.
Yeah.
So we have all nationalities, and it really, again, doesn't really come into the equation.
But it just adds to value of something, doesn't it? That diversity. Okay, so I suppose when you think about your career and the people that have supported you the most. Is there any instances where mentorship, I'm sure you have mentorships for yourselves at the moment, and I'm sure you mentor other people. Has that been a huge aspect of your careers and learning? And
yeah, it has for me anyway. I think you learn from everybody. Everybody you interact with, everybody you report to, whether it be a positive or a negative learning, but you learn from every experience and from every person you interact with. I would say the most instrumental mentor that I've had is actually when I did apply for that job 4 years ago and was unsuccessful. The person who actually was successful and got the position ended up being my manager, and she became probably the best mentor I have ever had. And it's because of her today that I was able to position myself as well to be successful when the role did open up. When she moved on to her new role, I was able to move into that, just giving you the time and just challenging you and helping you identify the areas of strength and the areas of weakness, and really taking that time to invest in me. And it's really because of her that I am where I am today. Like, the first question she asked me was, do you ever spend time on yourself? And my reaction was, no, I don't.
Sure, I wouldn't have time for that.
I'm so busy.
Yeah.
And getting me to change that mindset. Again, back to that point I made earlier on, there's nobody else sitting there waiting to figure out what job is going to be there for Annemarie. Where is Annemarie going? You have to do that yourself. You have to put in the time. So yeah, she has been really instrumental. She's still in the business, and I'm new to that role since February of this year, and she's still mentoring me. She's still supporting me through challenges that I might come up against. So I think now that I've had such a really positive experience with that mentor, I think everybody should have one. And I think it's so important that somebody that has already walked the path can actually help
give it back
and guide you and give it back. So yeah, it's definitely something that they have a good mentorship program in Cook. It's a relatively new program where leaders do go through the mentorship training and then you mentor others. So I'm planning definitely on trying to give back myself and going through that program in the next year. Obviously, you're mentoring anyway, but to actually become a master of it and really be able to pass on that benefit to others is something I'd like to improve on.
Because it's like the formal versus the informal.
Yeah.
We're always doing it as informal mentors, but putting that structure in place that you have had that helped you for someone else is probably key to you right now.
Absolutely. So yeah, I would say definitely worthwhile. Everybody should have a mentor.
I agree.
Yeah, I suppose I've had formal mentors in the past, but I would say probably the most impactful ones for me have been more the informal mentors. So, you know, managers that I would have worked for and would have really challenged me and made me, if you're presenting a set of data or a proposal or something, really challenging you to, you know, okay, think of your old cliche, think of your audience, how to present that, how to spin it, and just kind of how to think about it strategically. And, you know, I hate to say it, sell it to the people in the room going, this is why this is really good for you. I think as well, what was very important for me when I started out in engineering, it's to have a very good senior engineer guiding you and guiding your more junior team members. This applies to everything, even outside engineering, just to make sure that they learn good practices, that they fit in with company values, they learn to dot their I's, cross their T's, and that kind of stuff. Like, as Annemarie mentioned earlier, you'll take a small sliver of what you learn in college, but it's to basically kind of apply that. And I think that's very, very important. And you see a lot, there's a big trend now to go, oh, we don't need all these middle managers, and companies such as Amazon and stuff like that. What do they do? And you're kind of going, don't ever underestimate the value that that provides to your business and how that can shape your employees. And also for things like retention and just making people feel appreciated. You are valued and your work is valuable. You are doing a good job for the business. And also if people are struggling, they're the people that will notice.
And I was just going to say, like, sometimes isn't the mentorship when you're kind of having a bad day nearly even more important? Or sounding off someone that goes, maybe don't word it like that. Maybe try something different. It's, you know, that safe place that you can go to sometimes when you need it, when you just need another voice.
Just a good vent.
Just a good vent. Exactly. I think it's key. So I suppose when you think about mentorship, we've spoken about like key qualities or their core values under leadership. What would you consider to be really, really important? I suppose it has to be your personal values, really, that has helped you develop as a leader.
Yeah, like Cook, I would say of all the companies I've worked for, their values are something that it's lived and breathed every day. There's a host of the 7 values that Cook have, and they are act with integrity, demand quality, be transparent, give back, treat everyone with respect, solve problems together and continually improve. And then there's also 8 competencies that sit under that. And some of those are leadership competencies, and they are be aware, develop others, exemplify integrity, focus on the customer, lead change, maintain business perspective, promote communication, and solve problems together. And actually, when you look at those and you understand the fundamentals of those competencies and those values, that's really all you need.
Really is, isn't it? You've kind of covered everything.
Yeah. And I think as a leader, for me, the people that you have responsibility for in your department, they have to be able to trust you, and you have to have empathy. People are our most valuable asset. And if people don't feel that they can trust you or they can come to you to discuss a concern, then I think you've lost everybody, you've lost the audience.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important as a leader that you can gain that trust, that you create an environment and a culture where people feel that they can be open and they can raise an issue, and that you're very empathetic to the fact that they are people. Yes, they're in to do a job, but they're not just a number. They're people. They have lives outside of work. And I think Cook, of all companies I've ever worked for, that is so prevalent in Cook. They put the person first. So I think if you actually do live and breathe the Cook culture and the Cook values, that's really all you need. I know that might sound very corny because you walk around the building and you see the values on the walls, but they aren't just words on a wall in Cook. And I think that's what makes Cook different to most other places I've worked.
And I think it comes across in you both, the authenticity, the trust, the realness, the people are core to what you do. Because they said if you lose your people, you've lost your audience. That's really important. So those leadership qualities are what help you develop yourself and develop your team.
Yeah, and that self-awareness as well. You have to be aware of yourself, and you have to know, again, back to what we were saying earlier on, what's good, what needs work. How you show up every day, how you make people feel. They say culture is how you feel on a Sunday night about Monday morning. So it's trying to develop that sense that people want to come to work. It's a positive environment where you're going to be respected and trusted to do your job. You're not going to be micromanaged. That's kind of big for me.
I think if I was to say two things, it is trust. And the reason I would say trust is you need to trust the people that work for you. But more importantly, they need to trust me. I have to be myself. I have to be. Authenticity is bandied around a lot lately. But for me, it means more that I can go in and I can be. I am truly myself a Cook. There's no airs, there's no graces. I will be candid with you, but I feel so comfortable working there. There's no front, there's nothing. And that is indicative of how good the culture is, because if you're not comfortable in a culture, you put up barriers, and that comes across. If you're not feeling good about the culture, odds on your colleagues might not be as well. And then if you don't trust one another, how do you work together as a team if there's distrust there? And I think that's a massive thing. Like, I'm a huge fan of, it's a bit like you're all on the big wave. You either all rise together or you all fail together. And that is a huge thing. I think another thing that I think is very important is, I hate to say it, resilience. Because a lot of the time, and they talk a lot about resilience of women, I think it's regardless of gender, but it's knowing that there will be setbacks. They're generally nothing to do with you. There'll be ups and downs, there'll be challenges, but it's how you respond to those is a massive thing for me. And being decisive as well. Make a decision, stick with it, and you make that decision as informed as possible at the time. Remember all the assumptions you made. That was another big thing. But also, don't be afraid to go, okay, that was the wrong decision, and basically change it depending on what has changed. And that's also part of the whole empathy, trust thing, because people will come to you, and be always looking for clues from your team. There'll be the louder ones and the quieter ones. And the quieter ones are normally the ones you have to go, okay, you didn't say much. Do you agree or do you not agree? And try to watch all those dynamics to just basically make sure you're getting the best solution and you're considering everybody. And I think that is where the values come into it. If you were to do all the values and the competencies, that's exactly how to go. But that's the big thing for me is clear messaging, trust your people, they will trust you. Everything else will take care of itself. That's very simplistic, I know, but
No, but it's true.
Yeah.
And I suppose when you think about leading teams, and I'm sure you haven't got it right all the time, has there been any key learning to be a people leader?
Definitely for me, it's that you can't control the narrative. You can't always control the narrative. You can only control your actions within the situation, and how somebody reacts. It's not on you, it's on them. Because sometimes as a leader, again, back to those values and competencies, you feel that you're responsible for everything. But all you can really do is be true to your values, be true to how you communicate and how you treat people. And if they decide to react to a certain situation in a negative way, if you've done things right and you treat that person correctly and with respect, then that reaction is not your responsibility.
Yeah, because sometimes you have a difficult message to deliver.
Yeah, and conflict happens. It happens all the time, you know, in leadership. Even as Fiona said, we're all trying to achieve the same goal. We're all trying to get safe products out to our patients in a timely manner when they need them. But sometimes it's a bumpy road and there's quality issues or there's challenges. But you can get through those. At the end of the day, regardless of what department you work in or what level you're at in the organisation, we are all trying to achieve the same goal, and we have to remind ourselves of that. So conflict happens. But again, all you can be is responsible for your side of that. And that was a really hard lesson that I had to learn, because how people maybe reacted to certain things, I thought it was on me. Again, back to that, maybe focusing on the negative. I thought, it was how I approached it. But actually, when you stripped it back, maybe everything I did wasn't perfect. And you take that and you own that and you're responsible for that. And you address that going forward. But you can't be responsible for everything. That can be difficult when you have to deliver maybe a difficult message to somebody. That can be very challenging.
And I think when you learn that, it's key. Sometimes it's not what you're delivering, it's the how.
It's exactly.
You know, when you're able to control how you deliver something, you can't be responsible for what the reaction will be. So I think that's a huge part of the team, isn't it?
For me, I think it's transparency would be very important to me. Obviously, as a senior leader, you could be privy to certain things you can't share, but there's an awful lot you can share. And I think being transparent with people, because you are decisions that have been made either by you or by others, can impact their career, and by being transparent with them gives them agency, gives them ownership. You can explain to them, this is why X or Y has happened. So I think that's very important. Basically, it shows you respect the individual. It might be a positive or a negative outcome for them, or they mightn't care at all. And I think that's why it's very important to me, because I like to be told, you know, oh yeah, Fiona, you're going over to work on this or you're doing that. And that's a very simple example, but just having that level of transparency in the business. And I think that's something, Cook being a family-owned company, they place huge emphasis on transparency. And it's something that I think the senior leaders here in Ireland and in the US in the mothership place huge emphasis on, and really like to, you know, keep employees abreast of what's happening in all different areas of the business.
And it's the why, really, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Not you're moving here, but the why behind it.
Yeah,
exactly. And that keeps retention, and it keeps your team solid and close as well. I suppose, looking back at your career, have you ever thought, God, that was a hard lesson to learn, or that really shaped me? Is there anything that was a defining moment, or made you kind of move in a different direction, maybe?
For me, I had done 19 years in industry, and I decided after 15 years or nearly 16 years in Medtronic, I said I was going to leave Medtronic, and I went and I did BioInnovate. BioInnovate is a medtech entrepreneurship program that EI run in conjunction with NUI Galway. And the idea behind it is you go into clinical immersion and you basically look for unmet clinical needs. And I went in and I did basically my year and left my permanent pensionable job. And my father was like, what are you doing? Like, you're getting on grand there. Why would you want to leave? And I was just like, I've done industry for so long. Maybe I'd like to do my own startup. And then with the jigs and the reels and, you know, a small thing called COVID happening, I didn't come up with an idea that was good enough to try and get EI spin out. And that for me was hugely disappointing. And it was a very hard lesson to learn. And I was like, God, I made the wrong decision. Should I have stayed with my job? And in the end, I just went, okay, new chapter, we'll reassess. And I ended up, when I actually went into something I'd wanted to do for a very long time, as I went into program management. Because I'd always thought I will, you know, leave the technical behind and become a program manager. I ended up working at Rapid Diagnostics for COVID. And it was a huge learning. It was a global role. I learned a lot from it. But it was still, after the setback of not being able to spin out of BioInnovate, it was how I picked myself, dusted myself off, and then after a couple of years of program management, decided, God, I miss technical. So that was another thing that I realised, no, this isn't for me. I'll go back to pure R&D, and it was much, much better. But it was still difficult at the end of BioInnovate to realise, oh, what exactly did I learn? I learned tons, but it wasn't what I thought I was going to get when I left. And by the way, to my ex-alumni of that group who have spun out, it's a long, hard road. And you would want to have an idea you would sell your granny for, because they are years trying to get this stuff off the ground. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I was kind of going, I have nothing that I'm that passionate about. And that made me disappointed in myself, because I was like, come up with something that I really, really like. And I think that was a huge learning curve for me.
But if you never tried it.
Exactly. I could be still in parkboard traffic. Yeah. Probably let's cut that one. No problem.
And what about you, Annemarie? Anything?
I think for me, it's probably that unorthodox journey through education that I mentioned. If I had my time back, I would think I would have stayed in college. I would have got my degree. I would have kind of done the normal, do your 4 years, get your degree, get into industry. I do think that there's a tendency to be an eternal student these days, to stay in college for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And I think that I would encourage anybody that's kind of in that space now, maybe not to do that. Get your course, absolutely, get your education, but get in and just get a feel for what it's like, and then go back at night. As we said, like, companies are supporting people with that educational piece. I ended up doing my degree when my kids were small. I had a busy job. It was very difficult, even this year, to do the level 9 strategic leadership course. Again, busy job and busy life. So I would say, try and get your fundamental educational courses done early. I definitely regret that I didn't do that, and it's kind of made it a little harder, and maybe has meant that it's taken me longer to get where I wanted to go.
Is that the advice you'd like to give to kind of someone pursuing a career in STEM now?
Yeah, like, we have a really good graduate program in Cook as well, and it's really great because, like that, you get your 4 years, get your degree, and you come in and you get 18 months in industry.
You rotate.
We have somebody, we've had 2 graduates now come in quality, and they've worked with different sub-functions within the quality department. So they've worked in the analytical laboratory, they've worked with quality engineering, they've worked with quality engineering complaints, post-market surveillance. So they're getting exposure to different aspects of what it would be like to work in that world of quality in medical devices. So it's really excellent, and that could mean that they say, okay, I really want to specialise in this space, I'm going to go back and do this course to help me with that. But at least they know now what it feels like to actually work in the industry.
And you can specialise then because you have your level 8, as you said. It can help you diversify that then.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that you kind of take the leap into industry and just see what's for you, and then maybe decide what further education you want to do. Don't kind of keep putting it off. I've never been there, so I don't know what it's like. I'm sure it's amazing, and it has lots of benefits as well. But we've actually had somebody that did do their PhD and has come into industry and loves it, absolutely loves it, and regrets maybe not doing it earlier.
Okay. And it kind of comes back to, Fiona, what you spoke about there, like industry. Then you took an absolute U-turn.
I did my level 8, I did my 4 years, I went into industry, and then I did my master's part-time with company support. I definitely, the second master's, which was the information technology one, I got a lot out of that because I had experience in the business. I think if I went in as, a green or an undergrad, I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it, because I wouldn't have had the exposure to
more
just different areas. And, you can also use the old case studies for the project as well, which can be handy. I think that would be a huge thing for me, would be that continuous education part of it. Pursuing a career in STEM, what I would say to you is, if you like problems, if you like change, if you don't want to do the same thing every day, it's exactly what it does in the tin. For me, I know med devices is only a subset of it. It's making that impact to patients' lives. Like, I know there's devices I've worked on that have been used in members of my family that have given better clinical outcomes, have increased the quality of life. And, you go in there and you're able to go, hey, I know what that does. And, some doctors are like, you're one of the engineers from up the road, don't even talk to me, kind of thing. But then other guys are like, oh, well, would you consider this? And you're like, yeah, but maybe not for this reason. So that would be a huge thing. Another thing that I would say to you, if you're pursuing a career in STEM and any career, be adaptable, because we've spoken a lot about change and embracing change. But if you can basically show you're adaptable, it's a huge thing as well, because things will change all the time around you. As Annemarie said, you can't change them. So that would be a big thing for me. And I just think there are so many areas out there. Talk to people, actually talk to people, and just basically ask them, what do you do for your job? You learn so much by doing that. And I think a lot of people are like, they don't actually ask people what they do. And would you recommend it? I talked to like one of my cousin's kids, and she's like, she never even thought of doing engineering. I was like, oh, is that what engineers do? Yes, that's what engineers do. And like, and her buddy's a scientist and an accountant now. So it's just understanding that there's lots of opportunity out there in STEM.
It's so broad.
And another thing is, if you know any younger ladies or gentlemen, make sure they do not cut off too many avenues by not picking the correct subjects. And I would say, I think it has slightly changed, but when I was there, you used to have to pick between home economics and science. And my best friend to this day, who now works at IT, was going to pick home economics. And I said to her, I will not speak to you if you do that. And she chose science, and she's ended up with a degree in IT. But if she had chosen, like, at junior cert level to pick home ec and to cut off science, I loved home ec, but I had to do music instead. But I think schools have changed that now. Yes, just don't cut off too early. And, also encourage your daughters to go out and do the technical graphics, the woodwork, the metalwork, all of that kind of stuff. They'll love it. And vice versa. Send your sons off to do home economics if that's what they want to do.
Yeah. As long as you like what you do. Isn't that key?
Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. It is a cliche for a reason.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, well, ladies, I really enjoyed it, and thank you so much for your time. I think we spoke a lot about STEM and encouraging people into your fields, and Cook are doing huge things around diversity and inclusion, and we got to mention a little bit about that as well. So I really appreciate you giving up your time today. Thank you for tuning in today's episode of Greatness Has No Gender podcast with Cook Medical. Next week, the inspiring team from TE Connectivity, Marlon Van, Deirdre Hardiman and Colleen Markland join us in studio. Thank you again to our sponsors for HERO, and don't forget to like and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Your support helps us amplify these powerful stories and encourages more women and young girls to pursue their dreams in STEM. Until next time, remember, you are enough just as you are.